to recognize that the wait times generally, what the IG indicated so far at least, is the wait times were for folks who may have had chronic conditions, were seeking their next appointment, but may have already received service. It was not necessarily a situation where they were calling for emergency services. And the IG indicated that he did not see a link between the wait and them actually dying. That does not excuse the fact that the wait times in general are too long in some facilities.
That's the part of the whole press conference that really got me, daring to stand there and make an excuse for the wait times. But joining us now to talk about all of that is Ron Christie, columnist for the Daily Beast, CEO of Christie Strategies, former special assistant to President George W. Bush. Hey, Ron.
Steve, how are you, my friend?
Good to talk to you. So, first of all, let's just talk about him showing up yesterday, feigning outrage, and I didn't know until I saw it on CNN. And meanwhile, we're hearing left and right that his administration, his incoming people were told about this in '08 during the transition.
Not only were they told about this during the transition, but the chairman, Jeff Miller from Florida, the House Veterans Affairs Committee, wrote the president a year ago, almost to today, and said, "Dear Mr. President, there are some serious allegations that I think that you should look into, and it will require your leadership." So even if you're willing to give him a pass, which I'm not, that he knew about this when he came into office, you have a very powerful committee chairman saying there's something wrong with the VA and we need your leadership, and the president failed to act.
Yeah, and it just seems as if this is the deal on just about everything that comes his way, whether it's the IRS or here, or we'll get those guys in Benghazi, or no matter what it is, he's the last to know.
Well, and it's never his fault. I'm the last to know. I'm mad as hell. I'm going to keep people accountable. No, he isn't, and no, he won't. If you look at what the disastrous rollout that was the Affordable Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare, he didn't fire Kathleen Sebelius. He didn't fire anybody who was in charge of getting that website up. Now you have General Eric Shinseki, who by all accounts is a Vietnam War hero, but perhaps not the best person suited to run a federal agency. Yet, did he get fired? Nope. Did the president answer the question of, the president ask Shinseki to resign? Didn't even answer the question. So more of the same from this administration, ducking, weaving, bobbing, and trying to deceive the American people, which I think is just atrocious.
No, you're absolutely correct. And why did it take the Congress? Explain this to me, Ron. Why did it take the Congress, or the House, I guess, passed a bill yesterday, I don't know if it'll see the light of day. Why is there a need for a law that would allow the head of the VA to fire people? Is that because of unions and civil service?
Well, believe it or not, when back in 2002, when I worked for the Bush administration, one of the things that we successfully fought against when we created the Department of Homeland Security was the fact that we did not want to have collective bargaining rights for union members, and we did not want to have the Department of Homeland Security to be unionized for this very same reason. You need to have the best and the brightest people who work in the federal government, and if they can't do the job that they've been hired to do, they need to be let go. But we have a system now in the executive branch now where you have unions and you have the power of the unions that you can't fire anybody for anything. And I'll tell you one thing, it scared me. My wife used to work at the Department of Justice. When she was the Justice Department, Steve, you won't believe that someone who worked in her office brought a gun to work, pulled a gun on her boss, and they didn't fire her because the union stepped in, apparently.
Oh, that's hard to believe, but I'm not shocked because, we have teachers in New York City that are in the so-called rubber room. They haven't pulled a gun, but they did terrible things to get them removed from the classroom, but they can't be fired either. So they just show up every day, get their pay, and sit in a room.
That's right. They just sit and hang out and have a good time. And, meanwhile, the taxpayers wonder at the city level, at the county level, the state and the federal level, why we're running up these big budget deficits, in part because we are feeding the trowel that is public employee unions. I have nothing against the employees themselves who work very hard, who are very diligent. What I do have a problem with is the union bosses who set up a system to enrich themselves But let's go back to President Obama. Yeah, why does it have a act of Congress to get involved for the president to be able to designate you a secretary that he can fire people? You would think, Steve, if he was that mad, what did he say? I'm madder than hell.
Yep.
That Shisheki would have gotten the message that maybe if I can't have heads roll, maybe I can at least have some shakeups in management and put some people in a position where they can actually wade through this backlog.
You would think. That's a good one. You would think. All right, let me ask you a question. We had the primaries on Tuesday, and of note to me, and I don't know how much play it's gotten in the media, but Bill and Hillary's in-law, the former Congresswoman Margolis, was running in a primary to try to re-enter Congress, get her old seat back. And Bill and Hillary not only made commercials for her, but fundraised and made appearances for her, and she lost. What does that say, if anything?
Well, I think it tells you that the allure of the Clintons perhaps is lost a little bit of its luster. You're talking about a woman who was the deciding vote for the president's tax increase in 1993 that I remember vividly that day. I was on the floor of the House of Representatives, and the Republicans were chanting, "Bye-bye Marjorie," because they knew that if she had cast the deciding vote for that she would be defeated, which, of course, ultimately she was. But I think what it also tells you, Steve, is that it's very interesting that the Clintons, this, of course, is Chelsea Clinton's mother-in-law, that the Clintons never set foot in Pennsylvania to campaign for Marjorie. They had her attend a fundraiser in New York with, of course, Hillary. And then President Clinton cut this ad that had footage from the 1990s. So it seems to me that the Clintons did not want to get too deeply involved here, lest that this person lose. They can say, well, we endorsed her, but, we weren't really campaigning for her. So I think that's what it tells you. And I think people are also looking forward and not looking back, and I think the Clintons are looking back in the rearview mirror.
All right, I want you to hear something Howard Dean had to say. Just not shocking, but just kind of weird. Here's Howard Dean. Watch this.
This country has been sold down the river by the right wing for their own purposes. This is a Republican Party that has decided they like power so much that they think it's okay to win by taking away the right to vote. They are not American. They could be more comfortable in the Ukraine or Russia, but stay away from our country. This is based on the right to vote.
The only thing that was missing, Ron, was yeah.
well said. Again, Governor Dean is a relic. Governor Dean is really emblematic of what I think is wrong with the Democratic Party now. They recognize they can't run on the issues. They can't say that Obamacare was a success. They can't say that they've cut the deficit in half that the president promised to do in his first term, let alone his second. They can't say that he's achieving any significant results, President Obama, on foreign policy. So now it's about race, class, and gender. Republicans are racist. We don't want to pay women the same amount. And, oh, by the way, we want to deny them their birth control. Rather than saying, here's our positive vision, our message, our ideological path forward. I think it's really a sad demonstration of the fact that they don't have any ideas, they don't know how to lead, and they want to stay in power at any means and using every method at their disposal. And the only thing that they can do, Steve, I think, is to try to scare people.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Finally, I don't know if you've heard this Mark Cuban controversy. The man who said there was a slippery slope when Donald Sterling made his remarks, now under fire because he gave a video interview and talking about his own prejudices, said if he sees a black kid with a hoodie, he'll cross the street. And if he sees there a white guy with a bald head and tattoos all over his body and his face, he'll cross the street back. Well, to me, then he's an equal opportunity guy with equal opportunity prejudice. But what they're upset about, some on social media now, is that he dared to say hoodie, and that's disrespectful to Trayvon Martin, if you could believe this.
I mean, again, where will these folks stop in their pursuit of trying to roll back the clock to 1962? We're not living in Birmingham. We're not having small kids blown up in churches who are innocent. We're not having people who looked like me back then denied entry at the classroom door. America has made significant strides over the last 50 years that we have much to be proud of. And this sort of babble, in my view, is yet another attempt to say how racist, how awful this country is. And I'm sorry, a hoodie sweatshirt is a hoodie sweatshirt. It has nothing to do with Trayvon Martin. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and well, I personally think they should take the team away from him and make sure his family never attends another game to boot.
Yeah, how about that?
Oh, boy. Hey, Ron, great talking to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Be
My
well.
pleasure. Thank you. That's Ron Christie, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, it's time for Gimme 5. You know that because you can't live without it. But this particular Gimme 5 is the first of a two-parter, which will be continued in an hour from now as well with part 2. There was a white privilege conference in Madison, Wisconsin. You are going to have to see this to believe this. It got to the point where that if they asked white people in attendance at this conference to leave, to give people of color their own space without, I guess, the intrusiveness of anybody who's white, since it's a white privilege conference where they bash whites and Christians and capitalism in America. Watch. You won't be sorry you did.